The sun hung low over the Wyoming plains like a bruised peach, casting long shadows across the dirt road that led to nowhere special. Eliza Kane walked it anyway, her left leg dragging just enough to kick up little puffs of dust with every step. The limp had been with her since she was 12, courtesy of a fall from a barn loft and a doctor who said she'd never run again. She hadn't believed him then. She still didn't, but belief didn't change how people looked at her. She was 28 now, tall enough to meet most men's eyes without tilting her head, with hair the color of ripe wheat tied back in a practical braid. Her face carried the quiet strength of someone who'd buried both parents and a younger brother before turning 20. She'd spent the last 6 years moving from town to town in the high plains, looking for a place that didn't flinch when she walked in. She cooked well, mended fences better than most hands, could read brands at a glance, and knew when a horse was colicky before it even lay down. None of it mattered once they saw the limp. In Cheyenne, the livery owner had laughed outright when she asked for work. "Darlin', I need someone who can run when the horses spook." In Laramie, the hotel cook said he wanted quick feet in the kitchen. In Rawlins, the rancher she'd ridden 30 miles to see took one look, shook his head, and said, "Can't have no cripple slow in my crew." The word stung worse than the wind. Cripple. It followed her like a bad dog. She'd stopped asking for marriage after the third proposal fell apart. The first man, a storekeeper in Casper, had courted her for 3 months before admitting he couldn't bear the thought of his children inheriting weak legs. The second, a blacksmith, simply stopped coming around after he watched her try to climb onto a wagon without help. The third had been kinder. He'd said he loved her, but when his mother arrived and saw the limp, she whispered one word to her son, "Pity." He left the next morning without a goodbye. So Eliza stopped looking for love. She looked for work instead. Work didn't care about weddings or children or pity. Work just needed doing. She'd heard about the Rafter K Ranch from a drover in Medicine Bow. Said it was run by a widower named Caleb Thorne who kept to himself, didn't hire many hands but paid fair and didn't ask too many questions. She didn't have money for the stage, so she walked the last 40 miles, sleeping under sagebrush and eating what she could forage or buy with the last of her coins. By the time she reached the gate, her boots were cracked, her skirt hemmed in dust, and her leg ached like fire. The ranch house sat low and weathered, gray boards silvered by years of sun. A windmill creaked lazily in the breeze. Cattle lowed in the distance. A black and white dog lifted its head from the porch, ears pricked but didn't bark. Eliza stopped at the gate, wiped sweat from her brow and called out, "Hello, the house!" A man stepped onto the porch, tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 35. Dark hair streaked with early gray at the temples. He wore a faded blue shirt rolled to the elbows and carried the quiet authority of someone who owned every acre he stood on. His eyes were the color of storm clouds over the bighorns. He didn't speak right away, just watched her. "I'm looking for work," she said, voice steady despite the dry throat. "Heard you might need hands. I can cook, mend, ride, whatever needs doing." He came down the steps slowly, boots quiet on the dirt, stopped about 10 feet away. His gaze dropped to her leg, then back to her face. She braced for the usual, the polite refusal, the awkward glance away, the offer of water before being sent on her way. Instead, he asked, "Can you ride?" She blinked. "Yes." "Long day in the saddle?" "Longer than most." He nodded once. "Show me." He turned and walked toward the corral without waiting. Eliza followed, her limp more pronounced after the long walk, but she kept her chin up. Inside the corral stood a bay mare, raw-boned and watchful. Caleb opened the gate, took a bridle from the post, and handed it to her. "Her name's Sage. She's greenbroke, still spooky. Catch her, saddle her, ride her once around the big pasture. If she throws you, walk back to the house, and I'll pay you a day's wage for the trouble." Eliza took the bridle. Her hands were steady. She stepped into the corral, moving slow and calm. Sage pinned her ears, shifted away. Eliza spoke low, nonsense words her father used to use. The mare stilled long enough for Eliza to slip the bridle on. She led her to the rail, saddled her with practiced motions, ignoring the burn in her bad leg when she tightened the cinch. When she swung up, the mare crow-hopped twice, testing. Eliza sat deep, legs quiet, reins soft. Sage settled. They walked out the gate, trotted, then loped once around the big pasture, nearly 2 miles of rolling grass and sage. The wind pulled at Eliza's braid. For the first time in weeks, she felt something close to free. When she returned, Caleb was leaning on the corral rail, arms crossed. Sage was breathing easy, ears forward. He didn't comment on the ride. Instead, he said, "Are you hungry?" She nodded. "Come inside." The kitchen smelled of coffee and wood smoke. He poured 2 mugs, set one in front of her, then sat across the table. She drank slowly, letting the warmth ease the ache in her bones. He watched her for a long minute. Then he asked the question, "Why do you keep walking towards places that don't want you?" Eliza set the mug down. Her throat tightened. No one had ever asked her that. They'd asked what was wrong with her leg, or how much she could lift, or whether she needed charity, never why she kept coming back. She looked at her hands, calloused, scarred from barbed wire and hot skillets. She said quietly, "Because if I stop, then they win. The ones who think one leg makes me less. If I stop, I prove them right." Caleb leaned back in his chair. His face gave nothing away, but something shifted in his eyes. "My wife died 3 winters ago. Pneumonia. Left me with a ranch too big for one man, and a hole I can't fill. I've turned away every hand who came looking because I didn't want company, didn't want pity, didn't want anyone seeing how tired I was." He paused. "But I'm tired of being alone with it." He looked straight at her. "I don't care about your leg. I care if you can do the work, and if you'll stay long enough for me to learn your name without feeling like I'm prying." "Eliza Kane," she said. "Caleb Thorne." Silence stretched between them, comfortable for the first time in years. He stood. "There's a bunkhouse out back. Clean sheets in the chest. Supper's at 6. If you're still here then, we'll talk wages." She stayed. The first week was hard. Her legs screamed after long days in the saddle, but she didn't complain. She rose before dawn, lit the stove, made biscuits and gravy thick enough to stand a spoon in. She mended harness, branded calves, pulled wire, doctored a lame steer. Caleb worked beside her, never hovering, never helping unless she asked. He noticed when she favored the leg, but he never mentioned it. The second week, a late snow came. They spent 3 days in the barn with a heifer having trouble calving. Eliza knelt in the straw, sleeves rolled up, hands inside the cow, while Caleb held the lantern. When the calf finally slid free, slick and black, Eliza laughed, a short, surprised sound. Caleb looked at her like he'd never heard laughter before. That night, by the fire, he asked another question. "Ever think about quitting?" She admitted, "Every day." "Why don't you?" "Because quitting feels like dying slow. I'd rather hurt standing up." He nodded. "Me too." Spring arrived with mud and new grass. Eliza's limp didn't disappear, but it mattered less. The cattle didn't care. The horses didn't care. Caleb didn't care. One evening in May, they sat on the porch watching the sun bleed red across the horizon. A meadowlark sang somewhere close. Caleb reached over and took her hand. Not gentle, not tentative, just sure. "I've been thinking," he said. She waited. "I've got no talent for pretty words, but I know what I want. I want you here, not just working, here, with me, if you'll have it." Her heart hammered. "People will talk. They'll say you took pity." Let them. I stopped caring what people say the day my wife stopped breathing. She looked at their hands, rough, scarred from barbed wire and hot skillets. "You never asked what was wrong with my leg." "Didn't need to. It's yours. That's enough." Tears stung her eyes. She blinked them back. "Yes," she said. He pulled her close. She rested her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Years later, when their daughter asked why Mama walked funny, Eliza smiled and said, "Because the road to your papa was long, and I refused to stop walking it." And when their son asked why Papa married Eliza when no one else would, Caleb looked at Eliza across the supper table and said, "Because she was the only one brave enough to keep coming." The ranch grew. Hands came and went, but Eliza stayed.
The limp stayed too, a quiet reminder of every door that closed. But every morning she woke beside a man who asked the one question that mattered, not what was wrong with her, but why she kept going. And that was enough to build a life on.